Brought to you by Refi. Refinance your defaulted private student loans today at yrefi.com/Ramsey.
All right, today's question comes from Travis in Vermont. He says, I'm 23 and saving for a home down payment, which should only take 12 to 18 months. However, I've heard that you recommend not having a mortgage of more than 25% of your take-home pay. Even if I were to save enough for a 20% down payment, I wouldn't be able to get a mortgage anywhere near that. I earn $70,000 per year, which is above average for coming straight out of college. There are no starter homes in this area for less than $150,000. Do you think young people will ever have a chance at purchasing a house if we stick to your 25% guideline? All right.
Oh, that's a good
great
question. Yeah.
Let's talk about it from a couple of angles. Number one, I love that you want to buy a house. I think that's great. I think the dream of real estate is the American dream, right? To own something that's yours outright. It's great. What you first said was you could save for a down payment in 12 to 18 months, which lets me know whatever you had in your mind, you thought this number will get me in the door. But the door that it's going to get you in is a dangerous door for you. The reason that we say 25% of your take-home pay is because we want you to be able to live. Like, we want you to be able to breathe out here.
That's
because
don't want to be house poor.
Yeah, at some point, you have to think about it like this. At some point of the 100% pie of income that you have, at some point, you're going to want to invest 15%. So there's that. At some point, you're going to want to give 10%. So there's that. That's already at 25. At some point, you have a mortgage. Let's say it's more than 25%. Let's say it's at 40%. Well, suddenly you don't have much to live off of, right? You've really cut that wedge really, really small for you. And we find people all the time who call in and say, oh my gosh, I mean, it happened the other day, Ken, folks calling at 50% because they'll give you a mortgage up to 50%.
Oh my goodness.
And when that happens, these people can't breathe.
No.
Like, they can't pay for a pot to piss in. Like, they don't have anything.
One of my all-time favorite phrases, by the way. You dusted that one off. That's like an old school.
It came from the depths.
It did. That's like an old school phrase.
I think I probably heard my dad say it. But
oh, I promise you.
Anyway, that's the point. It has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with being a Ramseyism, right?
That's right.
It's about you. We want you to be able to live. So
it's about
there's
margin and emotion attached to that margin.
And so that's kind of what I want you to leave here with. It's not about us. It's about you being able to enjoy your home and have the money to do the things that you need to be able to do. So that's thing one. Now let's answer the question of, do you think single people will ever have a chance at purchasing a house if we stick to your 25% guidelines? The answer is yes, but, and you'll have to change your expectations on possibly the piece of real estate and the timeline that it will take to get you there.
That's right. And the zip code.
All these things.
Come on. And what you grew up in doesn't mean that that's what you're supposed to start in.
Facts.
And I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you grew up in a 4-bedroom, 3-car garage, and you think that that's what you're supposed to start with. And I'm like,
at 23?
Well, I think a lot of people do think that.
Right.
And it's like, wait a second. I mean, the first house Stacey and I started with, it's like a matchbox compared to what we live in now. You know what I mean?
I do know.
And we thought it was massive and scared to death of it, by the way. It's $198,000.
Wow.
And I thought, and by the way, I did it by the book, the down payment, the way Ramsey teaches it, but I thought I had mortgaged my life away because of the sheer price of the home.
Yes.
$198,000 back then. That was like, I thought I was going to die.
And that's so important to note, Ken. So important. Despite what your monthly payment for the mortgage might be, you still, that first home, you feel the weight of whatever the entire amount is.
Even though we put a nice down payment on, it was over 20%, but it still felt like, what have I done?
Yeah.
And so there's a responsibility there, which, by the way, makes me think. I want to just add one thing. I thought your answers were great. This is why we created what I think is one of the best resources we've ever created at Ramsey. And by the way, it's all free. It's called Ramsey's Real Estate Home Base. So anybody watching and listening right now, this is free. And it's absolutely chock full of, it's a podcast on there. We've got a book on there. We've got a video series, how-to articles, start to finish guides on buying or selling anything real estate related. If you're kind of going, what do I do?
Yes.
And you trust us, go to RamseySolutions.com/real estate. Let me say that again, RamseySolutions.com/real estate. If you couldn't write it down, can't remember it, go to the show notes for today. It's there. Very important that you understand what all is involved here. So really good question.
And Ken, let me drive
broke
this.
that down
Let me
well.
drive this point home one more way.
Drive it
because
down the lane.
There's
Dunk it.
always a new listener, someone who doesn't know our backgrounds, right? So my husband and I loved this question because right now the real estate, it's gotten more and more expensive.
Oh.
It started to cool out in some areas, but the truth is it is very expensive. And with other things being expensive, inflation and things like that, it does make it feel harder to be able to accomplish this dream. That is the truth.
Well, the numbers have gone up. You're right about that. It is a higher
skyrocketed.
level.
Yeah. And so I like to remind people when my husband and I were getting out of debt, of course, we couldn't buy a house during that time because we say you should really pay off your debt before you become a first-time homeowner. And so Sam and I rented Ken for 10 years. And during the course of that 10 years, we paid off $460,000 of debt.
Yeah.
And then we saved up and were able to do,
And you also had a
emergency
bunch
fund
of
and that
people
stuff.
living with you too, I feel like.
You say what?
Didn't you have a bunch of people living with you too?
Not a bunch of folks. We had roommates at one point. We did.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking that.
We were married, and we had another married couple that lived with us for a year.
I thought that was extreme.
10 out of 10 would not recommend, Ken.
But you did it.
We did it. But the point is,
I said a bunch of people. I'm sorry.
it kind of sounded like we were just on the block.
Like you were
just
living
had
in a
folks
shoe?
coming through. Living in a shoe. No, it just reframing like a time frame. If it takes 10 years, so be it. You'll be a homeowner. I can tell you will.
And here's the key. Actually, I'm really glad you brought that up because I think some people right now are still going, 10 years? Before you throw shade at my friend, I want to bring this back to you because that 10 years of rent, I'm sitting here with you today and I'm going to take a guess that you don't feel like you pissed that money away.
Not at all.
So what did the 10 years of rent, which some people right now are on TikTok, Instagram going, what?
Yeah.
How did that 10 years of renting give you freedom to get to where you are today? Break it down.
Well, I don't regret it at all. Like here in my life, I'm 41 years old. I don't go, oh man, if only I had bought my house when I was 23. Like there's no part of me that thinks back and regret at all.
Why?
Because it was worth it to do things right. We took 7.5 years, paid off all the debt. Then we lollygagged a couple of years because we were tired. Took some more time to save up. That's
well,
the
you
truth.
were paying off $500,000.
That's right.
You deserve a water break.
Took some time to save up. And then when we finally bought our house, I was pregnant. I had just had my first son and I was 36 years old. And it was great.
And now here you are,
Yeah.
homeowner.
I'm on my second house.
People think that that's wasting money. And in your case, it was actually the freedom and margin you needed to get out of debt.
That's right. Because it was cheaper.
Far cheaper.
It was far cheaper for us to rent. We had a season of roommates and it freed up money. And like we said before, the last thing I needed was more stress of then feeling like, okay, now I've also got this mortgage that I have to, be accountable for.
Why Refi refinances delinquent private student loans for struggling borrowers. Learn more at yrefy.com/Ramsey.